Hey, I'm Kai, and you know what this video is. You clicked on the title. I'm not going to waste any more time with an intro. I'll start with a quick run through of my signal chain, and this is also going to cover everything you need to get this working. So for a guitar, I've got my G4M 7-string, this is the 529 model. I'm plugging that into the Ampero Stomp 2, and then from the Ampero Stomp, I'm running into the orange pedal baby, into a Zilla 4x12 loaded with V30s, mic'd up with an SM57, and then plugged straight into my interface. I will show a more complex routing later on in the video, but this is where I want to start. I could also run into the effects return of one of my tube amps like the 5153 and the Rockaverb you see behind me, but I've got a few reasons for not doing that. Firstly, there's no volume control on these amps for the power amp section, so it's really reliant on the Ampero's volume knob, and that can be incredibly twitchy and give you some real loud volume bursts that I'm really not a fan of. It also makes you use the power amp section of that amp, which has got tubes in it, so you can't simulate the sound of power tubes. This isn't too bad when you're matching similar amps, so if I was running a 5150 model in the Ampero through the 5150, it'd sound pretty great. But when you start to change up the amps and run something like a Vox AC30 through it, it starts to fall apart a little bit. So for the first simple basic setup, we're just going to be running straight from the Ampero out to a cab. I have set up a fairly basic chain here. It's literally just a boost, the amp, and a noise gate, as well as some wet effects for some solo tones. I'm running the serial chain here, which is where you run straight from the input right the way to the output, but I will switch over to a parallel chain later on. As for the global settings, I think the only thing you're going to need to change for this setup is to change the output level to line. We don't want to add a cabinet to our signal chain here because we're running through a real cabinet and we don't want to double up on those sounds. With the Ampero's output all the way down, we're going to engage the power amp. I am overly cautious with this kind of thing. You don't need to constantly run it on low volume, but I always prefer to err on the side of caution and just start low and bring it up slowly. So as we start to bring up the volume knob, you'll hear it coming through your cabinet. That's a good level for me, so I'm now going to just quickly record through that and show you what it's sounding like. Now I'm just going to quickly engage the delay and reverb and show you the lead tone through this. If you liked how that sounded, drop a like on this video and hit the subscription so that you don't miss any of my future Ampero II Stomp content. Also, if you'd like to purchase this pedal for yourself, please check the affiliate link in the description box down below. So now that we've got the basic setup down, let's step this up a little bit and we'll switch over to a preset where things get a little bit more complicated. So in this preset, you can see we've still got our boost, our amp, our noise gate, as well as our delay and reverb. However, we're using the parallel split signal chain here, and we're running a cabinet signal out to the front of house. Now to simulate the front of house, I'm just going to plug this into my interface. One thing I should mention here, there is supposed to be a cabinet bypass in the global settings of the Ampero II Stomp. This would mean that you can run your normal serial effects chain and it would automatically bypass the cabinet on just one of the outputs. This would be so much better if it actually worked. However, I was having so many issues with it when I was setting it up that I realized parallel was just a much smarter way to go, at least until they update it. So the only thing to mention with this routing is that the top chain is going to be panned all the way to the right and the bottom chain is going to be panned all the way to the left. This means that the left output of the unit will be going to my interface and that's got the cabinet on it. The right output is going to the power amp and cabinet and that's got no cabinet on it. So let's bring the volume up again on the unit and hear what this is like. And again, just switching over to the delay and reverb for a little bit more of a lead tone. hopefully that gives you a good insight as to what the patch sounds like through both of the systems and how to set it all up. For an overview of my patch, just in case you were interested, I'm running the gated boost into the Dizzle VH4, then I'm going into the AI noise gate. For delay, I'm running the BBD delay M. Reverb is the 140 plate HQ, and then I'm splitting out to the cabinet. The cabinet that I'm using is the Dizzle 4x12A, mic'd up with a 421, a 121 near the center position. So with that, let's now talk about the pros and cons of running through a power amp and cabinet, just in case you're still on the fence about it. The main advantage is that most guitarists prefer to play through a real cabinet. Playing through an FRFR system or through monitors or headphones or anything like that, it works well, but it does mean that you're getting the added filtration sound of a microphone. When you run through a real cabinet, you're getting a much more direct and open sound. It's got a lot more low end and a lot more high end, just, feels a lot more like you'd expect a guitar amp to sound. Running a real cab also really helps for live sound, especially if you're in a smaller venue. It helps to really just fill out the sound for the people in the front row especially. There are some cons of running a rig like this, of course. Obviously, as you can see, the main one is the size. This is a very, very heavy setup to be lugging around anywhere, and it's really not super practical. It's also not the smoothest system to generally set up. I think I've tried my best to show you how it all works here, but as shown with the global cab bypass thing not working properly, it's not a system that's been optimized with the unit, and it is a little bit more complicated. The last con I need to mention is that a rig like this is incredibly loud. Just getting it up to a decent playing volume, you'll already be shaking the floors and stuff, and if you want to be recording, you're going to need to be louder than the acoustic sound of the guitar strings. Something that I may have neglected in this video, but it's something that I fight with a lot, especially in this small space. So that is everything that I've got for this video. Thank you ever so much for sticking around to the end of it. If you'd like to check out another one of my Ampero II Stomp videos, there'll be a link up on screen. Otherwise, that's all for this one. I've been Kai.